we continue to look for ways to really be attentive to social justice and looking at the root causes for our poor.
Okay, welcome everybody. Hello, hello. This is Sister Liz. You're listening to In the Company of Charity podcast, a podcast by the Daughters of Charity. And I am here with my good friend, my co-host in crime, Sister Elizabeth Grime. Hello, Sister Elizabeth.
Oh my gosh, Sister Liz, you're so excited today. What's going on?
We have so many things coming up. It's really bonkers.
We do. We could do a podcast every day. I don't know, that would be maybe a little, too much of a good thing, how that is. So we just say, we're just going to give it to you.
If the people want it, listen, if you want it.
we'll be here. That's right. That's right. Company of Charity, gmail.com. Let us know. Say,
we are literally days away from part 2 of our provincial assembly. It's coming.
Yeah, it is coming. And for those of you who don't remember part 1 of the assembly and what an assembly is, this is when all the Daughters of Charity, at least right now in our province, in the province of St. Louis, but the province of Elizabeth Ann Seton have already done theirs, but Daughters of Charity across and around the world meet, gather, and talk about the same thing. Basically, they talk about the same theme. And of course, in each country, it's very different. Imagine how a sister in Japan or in parts of Africa, sister in the Congo, as opposed to sister in Ireland, how they look at these, different topics and themes that we have. But our theme this year is Ephatha, encounter.
Ephatha. I don't know how you say
nobody
it.
does.
Ephatha,
Yeah.
Ephatha. We don't know.
We don't know, but it's there. It's there. Yeah, it's about going out to encounter. And that's what we're going to be talking about. And this is part 2.
We are going to give you a full recap on the next podcast.
Yeah.
We are going to talk to you all about how that went on Zoom.
I was just going to say, pray for us on Zoom. 100 sisters on Zoom.
It's going to be a special experience.
It's going to be great. It's great. They're learning so much,
Yes. And the other thing coming up is, of course, as always, every year we make our vows on the Feast of the Annunciation, which this year has not been moved. Some years it falls into Holy Week and they move it to the following week. But this year it is on March 25th, and it's going to be pretty awesome.
It's so awesome. It's so incredible. I can't
Saying
believe it.
Yes once
Saying
again.
Yes. Yep.
Like
and I realize this will be my 20th time, because I think, as I said in the last episode, that I will be celebrating 25 years as a Daughter of Charity. Yay.
Applause.
Yay. Thank you. So that means 5 years after we enter, we can make our vows for the first time, and then we renew them every year. Yeah, and so that's very exciting.
Yeah, we'll be doing it at our local parish here, and the priest is so stoked, and he wants to, of course, afterwards, you in this area, you remember South Texas, we have to have breakfast tacos afterwards.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
It's really happening. we'll be celebrating our vows and then having breakfast tacos.
I don't think we're going to be doing that. We're going to be having a mass at our house, privately. Because we're not really, the churches are open, but they're still, a little different. So, well, who knows, in a couple of weeks what it might be like, March 25th. But I think we're going to do it at home, and we'll have a nice dinner afterwards. So
awesome.
I don't think it will be of tacos either. In New York, I'm not exactly sure. I don't know where there's not many places to get tacos up here.
Well, you guys have the best bagels, so you'll have to eat a bagel in our honor.
Oh my gosh, we have the best bagels. Yeah, absolutely. Good Chinese
food. They do it
food
right in New York.
And good Italian food. We have some good Bosnian food here. Our refugee communities create some amazing diversity in meals. So we'll see what we have, but we will obviously be reporting on all of this later, because we know that you're all already wondering what the sisters do.
Today's episode is a really good one. I think you guys are really going to like it. Sister Grace, Sisters of Charity Federation.
Yes, this is a little different topic for us.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
Yeah.
They talk a little bit about the history. There are many, many communities that trace their lineage back to
Mhm.
Mother Seton in Emmitsburg, which of course is a very special place to me and to you as well.
Yes.
That's our little homeland, Emmitsburg,
Yeah. Did
Maryland.
our seminary? I did my seminary there. You didn't, but it was where we began. And
Yes.
yeah, in that area. Very exciting.
Yes, and so you're going to hear from Sister Grace about that experience of being is she the president or is she
She's like
what
the
the
executive,
leader?
yeah, the
What do
executive
they
director
call
of
her?
the Federation of the it's the Sisters of Charity Federation. Um, and Federation obviously just means a collective of groups. And so it's a collective of, as you said, sister congregations that kind of trace back their lineage and their founding or their charism to charism of St. Vincent de Paul, Louise de Marillac. So the Daughters of Charity and many of the Sister of Charity congregations are part of it. So she'll tell you more about it. It's pretty fascinating. I learned a lot, really. There were, I thought, oh, I already know all this stuff, because I went through the training, in the seminary. Like, I had this, I know it. And I was like, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So I think, any sisters listening, anyone in part of the Federation, you might learn a little bit from Sister Grace in the process of this. But I think it's a really good history story of how the congregations were founded and how we try to live that out now, how we
Mm,
try to collaborate with one another, how we can see that the charism of St. Vincent de Paul is lived out in just amazingly creative ways and by so
all
many
over the
people
world.
all over the world. Yeah.
Mm.
And in so many different ways. So, um, yeah, I think everyone will enjoy it. And she's delightful. She's just such a great person. I love her. I love her. It was great
Yes.
to have this time with her.
And if you didn't see, the National Shrine of St. Elizabeth Ann
Mm.
Seton put out a really cool video, and I'm not just saying that because I was in it. There's a
Yes, you
great
are. Be honest.
No, listen, it's a great, well done video. It has some amazing information about her life and good stuff. So check that out at the National Shrine of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. And as always, if you love this episode, take a screenshot of it, text it to your friends, send the link out, post it on social. We have our Instagram going, Company of Charity Podcast, and send us your comments and feedback and questions to companyofcharity@gmail.com.
So welcome everyone. This is Sister Elizabeth and I am here with a good friend of mine, Sister Grace Hartzog. She is the Executive Director of Sisters of Charity Federation. Sister Grace and I have become friends in this Federation of Charity. And so we're so glad she could join us today. Sister Grace, how are you?
Well, thanks, Sister Elizabeth. I'm really honored and happy to be with you. Indeed, our charism and our ministry has brought us together to be friends, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm very well and happy to be here.
Well, great, because these are different times. We're recording this during the kind of height or really kind of bad times of COVID. And so we just want to make sure that we, send out prayers to all those who might be suffering, those who have had loved ones who have died or are sick, just to know that we and the sisters and the church are praying for everyone. So we kind of open with that. But so, we're together today. I'm a daughter of charity of St. Vincent de Paul. Everyone who listens knows that. And you are a sister of charity. Explain what's the difference. And, so the Daughters of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul, we're kind of one community, but the Federation is made up of others. So what is your community? What's the congregation you belong to? And then begin to then tell us a little bit about the Federation and what that is. And how you are the executive director of it. What does that mean exactly?
Well, let me begin with a little bit about myself, I am a Sister of Charity of Seton Hill in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. We're located close to Pittsburgh, and we are the youngest branch of the Sisters of Charity founded by Elizabeth Seton. And I can share a little bit more about that later when we talk about how we came to be. I have been blessed to be in ministry for 60 years as a Sister of Charity. And I've had so many wonderful opportunities to be with God's people and share our charism of charity. My most recent experience in ministry, though, has been the executive director of the Sisters of Charity Federation. Now, let me give you a little background on, Sister Elizabeth mentioned that how are we a little different with Sisters of Charity and Daughters of Charity. We're not really different because in 1812, Elizabeth Seton, who was fondly known as Mother Seton, took a little group of sisters and took a bold step on a spiritual journey and began the Sisters of Charity. And in order to begin a congregation, you have to have a rule. And she loved the rule of St. Vincent de Paul and St. Louise de Marillac. And so in the 17th century, Paris women religious were more monastic and confined to lives of prayer within their cloisters. Vincent and Louise, on the other hand, envisioned a new path, and they wanted their sisters to work freely out in the world, ministering directly to the sick and the hungry poor. So the rule of St. Vincent de Paul not only delineated the duties of a life of charity required, but also captured the spirit and the charism that characterized that work. And Mother Seton loved that rule. And so when she began her Catholic Sisters, it was the first congregation to be started in the United States of America. So while the Daughters of Charity are more founded in Paris, France, Elizabeth was the first and also the first American saint to be canonized in the United States.
Yeah, it's so, I love just even hearing that story. We're so steeped in it. We forget sometimes that, we're the first in a lot of things, and that doesn't necessarily make it better or worse, but that since 1633, when the Daughters of Charity were established, the religious life for women changed, basically. As you said, they were predominantly monastic prior to that. And what St. Elizabeth Van Seton would have, what she wanted to do was to be able to teach and to work with people outside the cloister wouldn't even have been possible in many ways had it not been for the spiritual inspiration of both St. Vincent and St. Louise. And so I just love that, and we should also say that in religious communities, I think it gets very confusing for people. There are rules, or not rules like not rules like laws necessarily, as you think about it, but it is a rule of life. We call it a constitution, or some people would call it a rule of life, and it guides us in our life as religious women, religious men, different congregations. St. Elizabeth Ann Seton had the option to pick others if she wanted. There's the rule of St. Benedict, the rule of St. Dominic, there's the Augustinians. But we're so grateful, that in the United States, she chose the rule and the charism of St. Vincent de Paul to follow. And from that comes this relationship with the Daughters of Charity, as you said, founded in Paris, and the Sisters of Charity founded here in the United States. So go on, tell us more of this story.
Thank you for expanding that, because that leads then to how the Federation was born.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the very beginning days, initially, it was pretty much just back in 1947, the sisters were kind of together. Now, and the Mother Seton daughters were working together for the canonization of Elizabeth Bailey Seton. And that became the primary focus of that group until 1975. And then the founding members of the conference, it was called a conference then, of Mother Seton's daughters, were the Daughters of Charity of the United States in Emmitsburg and the St. Louis provinces. And then the Sisters of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul in New York, the Sisters of Charity in Cincinnati, the Sisters of Charity of St. Elizabeth in Convent Station, New Jersey, and the Sisters of Charity of Seton Hill, my community in Greensburg, and the Sisters of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. So that little group started to even work more closely together and explore the charism and the formation and mission projects that were related to our shared charism and heritage of charity. So it wasn't until 1965 that the Federation of the Daughters of Blessed then, because Elizabeth became blessed, Blessed Elizabeth Ann Seton, that they responded to an invitation of the Second Vatican Council that any community sharing the same charism would form a federation of the Daughters of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
It came from there. That's pretty cool.
Mid-60s.
Yeah.
And the first group that really united because they wanted to really go about this in the same charism with formation were all of the sisters who were missioned to do the work of formative experiences for the newer members. So the formation directors gathered long before there was anything formal. And they started to gather on a regular basis. And then other members began working with what we called the Mother Seton Guild. And sisters from all these congregations went to Emmitsburg to work at the shrine to serve as docents. And so many of my sisters came to love the Daughters of Charity who were at the shrine in Emmitsburg, Maryland. And that was the beginning of my personal interactions as well.
So I did my seminary, and again, those who are listening know the seminary is the code word for novitiate for the Daughters of Charity. And I did mine. I came through, started in the province of Emmitsburg, of the Southeast province, before our provinces came together as the province of St. Louis. But yeah, I remember meeting Sisters of Charity, and we actually did some formation with the novitiate of the Sisters of Charity that was in Fort Lee, I think, at the time. So I'm just thinking, you know, that's 1996. And when you think about, you know, 1633 to then the early 1800s to now, God takes his time, you know, to bring together this charism. I mean, Vincent and Louise, what they began and what St. Elizabeth Ann continued. And now we kind of hold precious this development and this charism and continue to bring it forward. So I find it fascinating as you're kind of talking about these different developments, these pieces, and how my own formation was a part of that. You know, I begin to realize that now the more and more I connect with sisters in the Federation. So I appreciate that history.
Well, and I'm grateful that you mentioned, Sister Elizabeth, that your formation experience at Fort Lee, because that was a collaborative program that was dreamed by formation directors and has evolved and transformed over the years. And you mentioned in the beginning that we came to know each other through the House of Charity, which is also a collaborative program of ministry with the Federation. So, and I can share a little bit more about that if we have time.
Sure, yeah.
So, what I think is important to realize is that over the years, after we began to evolve, knowing that we had the sisters of the charity foundations from Elizabeth Seton, who shared the charism of Vincent and Louise, and now Elizabeth. And so the Federation began to grow, and people were saying, well, we need to invite other communities that have that same constitution or rule, as you mentioned, differentiated. And so the very first group that sought entrance into the Federation in 1979 was the group of the Sisters of Charity of the Immaculate Conception in New Brunswick, Canada, because they also have the rule of St. Vincent de Paul. So they were kind of the trendsetters for seeking admission. And then as it evolved over the years, we had other groups because the Sisters of Charity of Halifax were kind of the grandparents for the Sisters of Charity of the Immaculate Conception. And then that just kind of grew into other groups. And now we have 14 groups in our Federation.
Wow.
So, and we have the newest group are the Sisters of St. Martha of Prince Edward Island, who really came out of the Sisters of St. Martha of Antigonish in Canada. So we have expanded we are now a North American Federation. It's not.
Wow, if we were on ancestry.com, this would be pretty interesting. Who begat whom?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting when you start to think about the web, and I'm sure people listening are saying, who are all these religious communities? But when you go back and say, yes, we've branched off into different ways to address, in many ways, the needs that were in front of us, in the ways that we could, that different groups sprouted, but the charism, the roots, the core soil that we're rooted in is the same.
Exactly. And
St. Louise,
that's an interesting story.
It's great.
A friend of mine just wrote to me the other day to ask me if I knew, quote, a Sister of Charity of, and she named the rest of the community. She said, I'm sure she's in your Federation. And I wrote back and said, well, not really, because I checked their website and they have a rule of their founders took the rule from Benedict. So
see that?
Yeah, so I said, even though the Sisters of Charity is in their title,
Yeah.
The Federation has everyone who has a rule.
You got to do your investigation. Good job.
So I'm
Not that we don't love them. The Benedictines are great,
okay.
of course. Yeah.
We're all in ministry together, and
yeah, absolutely.
And I would say that probably all congregations this day are really advocates for the poor and the marginalized.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all united, no matter where we are. And that's the gift that we bring from all of our founders. There's, as we look at the history of every congregation, that is, one of the other things that happened early in our Federation was that people really were advocates for social justice. And St. Vincent de Paul was such an advocate for systemic change. Mm-hmm. And certainly that is the cry right now in 2020, that we continue to look for ways to really be attentive to social justice and looking at the root causes for our poor and marginalized. So we're all in it together and trying to figure out ways to move together. one of the things of the mission statement for the Federation, I think will summarize what we've been sharing now. Impelled by Christ's love and joined together in the mission of charity, we respond to the cries of those who are poor and marginalized.
Oh, it's very simple, beautiful. And yeah, we can all, I think, any one of the congregations can see that as their identity. So yeah, it's funny, you know these as when you're involved in these things, you kind of don't think about like what's the mission statement, how is it articulated, and that I think is one that any daughter of charity, any sister of charity who follows the rule of St. Vincent and St. Louise could, hang their hat on and say, oh yeah, that's who we are. And
Yeah.
in our congregation, this is the way in which it has developed over the years. This is how I see it being lived out. So that's great. It's a very unifying statement for sure.
And I know you were a part of our gathering in Chicago. We had over 500 people join us. Our Daughters of Charity, the Sisters of Charity, our associates in all of the congregations that were invited, and we had a lot of staff people come. And one of the things that had been was the Federation vision statement was to take that same mission statement that we are impelled by the gospel, charism of charity, and we commit ourselves to be in solidarity with our sisters and brothers, and we will use the energy of our love, the gifts and talents of all of our communities, and we will use our material and spiritual resources to collaborate in the creation of systemic change locally and globally for the common good. And so that was part of the call, was to say that if we live that mission and vision, then our desire is to deepen our relationships and our interconnectedness so that we can share that among ourselves and beyond with the whole Vincentian family, which is our global family all over.
Oh, which is huge. It's humongous. We keep finding family members everywhere.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. We're going to have to do a whole other podcast just on, and we've done a couple with Father Greg Gay, if anyone wants to kind of look back, that we've talked with Father John Freund from the FamVin website to talk about this large group, St. Vincent de Paul Society, Ladies of Charity, the sisters, the priests, the lay people, Miraculous Medal, folks. So many groups.
Oh, it would be a wonderful podcast. And I have the honor to serve, represent the Federation on the board, the executive committee of the board for the international family. And it has been such a growing, life-giving experience to meet. We've been meeting more often virtually, I must say. We usually meet in person once a year, but we decided we needed to meet more often. And so we have representatives of all the groups that you mentioned. So the International Ladies of Charity, the International St. Vincent de Paul Society, the Vincentian Brothers, the Vincentian Priests, and then we have federations from Austria, Germany, and of course the Daughters of Charity from Paris. Your general leaders are on. So it's been such a wonderful experience. And we had our first ever gathering of all the leaders in Rome last year in January 2020. And we had over 73 branches of the family represented. So it would be a wonderful podcast to get a part of you. It's great.
I know the deeper we get into it, the bigger the tree becomes, the more it kind of overwhelms, but at the same time can excite when you think the charism of this, kind of quirky priest in the 1600s, and this wonderful woman, St. Louise, who just felt God was calling her to do more, that together they, became the parents of this spirit in the church that just continues to grow and is manifested not just in the life of consecrated people, but in the life of anyone in the church really can step into this charism and find a place, because um,
Oh, and
service to the poor is of course, and to those who are marginalized is of course, as you were saying, the work of the church at large. Um, but so the Federation, as we're talking about, the Sisters of Charity Federation, is really a small group in some ways of American or Canadian women, correct?
North
Um,
America. Uh-huh.
who identify themselves in this bigger, wider family. And part of your role is to represent all of us in that big family of things. And so I think that's exciting to know that that we're kind of at the table in a way, that our voice, because I think sometimes when we're scattered, when there's any one congregation can't speak loud enough, that when you're united, we can do so much more. And we begin to see that in the collaborative works that the Federation has sponsored.
And that
So,
is another gift that we have. We have a small staff, but the Federation made a commitment to hire a full-time NGO representative for the Federation, and Sister Teresa Cotterin, who's the Sister of Charity of Nazareth, also in our Federation, and represents us. But she works collaboratively with the Daughters of Charity, who are NGO representatives,
mhm.
and the Vincentian priests as well, so that their voices are also reflected in the UN in multiple ways. And we're very grateful and blessed to have all of them speaking on
Yeah.
behalf all over the world.
I think that's one of the things that I think sometimes people who think about religious communities, certainly nowadays when they say, oh, I don't know when the last time I saw a nun was, or, there just aren't that many of us, for those who remember the old days when there were, religious everywhere. And I think we're still in a lot of places people don't necessarily know, but that something like this helps me to see, reminds me, and I think can help our listeners see that, religious life, while it is focused and usually laser focused on what's in front of us, those who are vulnerable, those who need our services, or those who we partner with in the local community, the poor that we work with, those we journey with, that's very local, very focused for me, but that work spreads across the country, spreads across the continent, spreads across the world in so many ways. And as you're talking about having NGO representatives, and it can sometimes sound very administrative and institutional, but we have to engage with each of those institutions and in each of those kind of administrative bodies, in order for us to bring the voice of those whose voices are often silenced because of poverty and disadvantage. And so, just as you were saying about NGOs and everything, gosh, we are really everywhere. It's amazing. It's really amazing, and wonderful. I think they said, a depth of religious life that many people may not understand. That it's not just me in my local place, but me in my local place represents the world's issues in so many ways too.
Yeah, our Constitution, and I'm sure you would find it in your rule as well, it says where one Sister of Charity is, we are all there.
Yeah.
And I think of that frequently when I'm representing my community, and how am I representing the charity that we're called to. Some days it's easier than others.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
it's a reminder, a constant reminder that we are in it. We really are called. And, you mentioned earlier, and I was thinking about another wonderful group when you said our lay contemporaries, there's a wonderful group of lay volunteers that are young people that are really Vincentian volunteers and engaged. And in fact, we love having our college students come from all of our universities and colleges that are Vincentian, or we call them Setonians. So
Mhm.
they were founded by with the Vincent Charism or the Mother Seton. They come to the House of Charity and do service work and learn what it is the sisters are doing and how the sisters are living together. And so we have young men and women who are engaging in our life of community and prayer, as well as ministering to the poor. So
Yeah.
it's been a real gift at the House of Charity in New Orleans.
So Sister Grace, tell us, this obviously is bigger than we can fit into one simple podcast, right? And so we'll make sure that the links to the Federation are available and ways in which people can find out about the other congregations, more contact with the charism itself. But tell me, what's your vision, or what's your dream or hopes for the future? Where do we go from here? What does this federation do in the future? How do you see its relevance continuing, especially I think in a world that we see becomes more and more secular, more and more struggling with its identity in faith? How do you see the federation continuing to be relevant and helpful?
It's an excellent question. I work with our board, and the board consists of each of the congregational leaders. Some are called general superiors, some are called congregational leaders. They have different titles, but they're all the elected leaders of each of the congregations that are in the federation. And do follow the link that Sister Elizabeth sends. We have a wonderful social media link, as well as our website, and the website will take you to all the congregations, and so you can get to know more about each of the 14 groups. I struggle with this sometimes because we're getting smaller.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of newer members who are energetic and committed to the charism. We have a lot of associates with younger groups that are really committed to our charism and may not be living it out in a VOD life, but will be living it out in continuing the mission and the ministry of St. Vincent de Paul. My hope is that we will be of support to one another. Our smallest congregation has only 14 members, but they are very, very much alive in their ministries. And, it just gives me great joy to see and talk with the leaders of their clinics that they've opened, and soup kitchens and all the things that their lay leaders will continue once those 14 sisters have gone to God.
Mm-hmm.
So the charism will live. I'm not afraid of that. But how we can continue moving forward in celebrating who we are and what we're about and where we go to help our newer members also, keep hopeful. I've always been a hopeful person. I pray that I will always be that way until I'm called to God. And I think that that's the gift that we can share with one another, that we celebrate who we are and what we've been called to and how we've been called, and how God's plan will unfold for the Federation in the future is in God's mind, but also I think it's in the mind of a lot of our wisdom people, our elder sisters. My 96-year-old friend reminds me all the time that we could do this and you could try this and you could do that. So I think these are inspirational times to keep thinking of ways that we can collaborate and be together.
I think too, the hope is even expanded more as the Federation continues to kind of call us together and to recognize that we are much more than the sum of our parts. We're together we can do things that any one group by itself wouldn't be able to do, might not even think about doing. So
That's
I
right.
appreciate that message of hope.
And right now we have a group of newer members who have already are involved in vocation ministry and helping women discern, as well as people who have been in formation. And it includes the Daughters of Charity and Sisters of Charity. And one of our hopes and dreams is that a group will be able to work with women who are really discerning a call to say, how are you called to live out this charism? Whether it's going to be by entering a religious congregation that shares the same values and charism, or a call as a volunteer, or, so wherever God is leading them. So I'm excited about that. I think it's going to be in our future, and it will also be a support group for all those women who are looking for a way to serve.
Yeah. Well, I know the Federation is very blessed to have you as the executive director, because we need someone who has the hope and the vision and the love of the charism that I know that you have, and that you've shared with us today. Is there any last thing you would like to tell our listeners, women who might be discerning, or even sisters who are listening that are maybe struggling a little bit, and where is this charism taking them? What do you want us to know about this gift that we've been given? And
It's a wonderful, well, there's a wonderful quote from Elizabeth Seton, which if you look at any of her writings or she draws on Vincent de Paul. St. Vincent de Paul always talked about providence and listening to God and not going ahead of God's plan for us. And Elizabeth certainly emulated that and would call her sisters to that experience. But the quote that gets me through a lot of the days that Elizabeth has been so much, it was just in her writings throughout, is to be attentive to the grace of the moment. There's, it's just a longer quote than that, but that gets me so often, just really being attentive to what God is asking, and it is a grace that comes. It's a grace of the moment, and not to run ahead of God's plan, but to be in touch with someone who can journey with you, that you trust, and preferably it would be a sister or a daughter of charity who is living the life, with whom you can really share your heart. And every congregation has someone who journeys with people, called a vocation director, or a vocation minister, or whatever. But if there's ever anything that we can do in the Federation, I'm certainly happy to guide and direct you to people like Sister Elizabeth, who would be a wonderful guide on the journey. And I leave you with this quote from Elizabeth Seton, which I also love. Is she was writing, she had a lot of good friends, and she was a widow, a mother, a grieving mother. She converted to Catholicism, lost a lot of her close family because of it. But she lived that life of openness and welcome. And so she used to say, she wrote to one of her friends, encouraging her to come visit. And she said, when you want to visit, the front door, the back, the side door will always be open and will always lead you to the chapel. And all the windows up and down will open at your approach. And I think I love that quote, and I've paraphrased it a bit, but it's just, I think you'll find that I find that with every congregation I visit in the Federation. The front door, the back door, the side door, the windows, and we all
everything. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I was thinking, the first quote that you mentioned from St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, that you have been the grace of our moment. So I am grateful to you for being part of our podcast today, sharing the work that you do, and your love of this great charism and your love of Elizabeth Ann Seton, who really pulls together for those of us who follow this charism. So, pulls that triumvirate, that threesome together. And so I'm really grateful for that. So thank you so much for spending some time with us. And
Thank
and
you.
thank you for the work that you do.
And thank you for being a partner with me.
It's my pleasure.